we need to keep that humility that we're not above this. And we didn't create it. We exploited it. And our potential downfall is to over-exploit it, take it all, clear cut it, log it, mine it, dig it up out of the ground and burn it. The end game to that is destruction. But if we can keep significant sections of this earth, that's our hope. I mean, selfishly we say, well, that's where the medicines could come from and that sort of thing, the new cure for cancer. My attitude is, it's not all about us. We need to let evolution and the power of wilderness exist for its own sake and go on without us. And rather than gobble it all up and use it and then wonder what happened, we need to stem back.
Well, I heard you have a new book coming in July. You want to tell us something?
It's going to be a 244-page coffee table book called American Bison, or excuse me, called me Yellowstone Bison. It's the story of their recovery when they were almost extinct in the late 1890s and how they've now come back pretty well, the wild bison. So it's again, a coffee table book, and the text is mostly written by a man named Chris Jeremiah, who's the bison research fellow in Yellowstone Park. And then it's my stuff. And I fell in love with bison when I was a kid, actually, and I've wanted to do a book on bison for years, so this is my chance.
Yes, I learned quite a bit about bison. I found that they originated in Asia and they came across the strait.
The Bering Land Bridge, right? Yep. They evolved in Asia and Europe about 250,000 years ago, and they came across the Bering Land Bridge, they estimate about 160,000 years ago. It was Bison priscus was the Latin name. And then they evolved here. The priscus lasted until about 5,000 or 6,000 years ago. So at one point, there were 3 species of bison on this continent. And the only one that survived it's the one we have now called bison.
One of the species of bison had longer horns that went out, and it went up to like 3,000 pounds?
3,000 pounds. And the horns, modern bison, they kind of go like this, and these kind of went straight out and up a little bit, and they were at least 7 feet from tip to tip. Huge. I figure they stood probably almost 8 feet tall. Yeah.
Put it into perspective, like one of those longhorn steers has got quite a span on it.
Probably similar to those, a really big longhorn steer. Yeah. I mean, I'm with tall, and if I extend my arms out, that's 6 feet from tip to tip. So if you're about 6 feet tall and spread your arms out, those horns were longer than your arms. And they were amazing. There was one excavated by the Denver Museum of Natural History just outside of Aspen, Colorado. And I'm going to use a photograph of that bison skull in this book. And the guy who dug it up is about 6'5", and this skull is standing on end, and it's taller than he is. I mean, it would have been unbelievable to confront one of those in the early morning hours. It's like, wow.
Yeah. And your work has really taken you through all hours. I was surprised to find that you had done long time lapses at night, overnight of the moon, like moon sets. And you've done a whole lot of exploring throughout Yellowstone, skiing throughout it. It must just really be so exhilarating and free to be that deep into nature.
Yes, that's a good observation. I've skied across Yellowstone Park 3 times, which is, I only know a couple other instances of other people skiing across Yellowstone. And the first time I did it all the way across was 41 years ago, 1985, and I did it solo. And, I didn't plan on it. My last partner bailed out 30 minutes before we were supposed to leave town. But I went on my own, and I grew up on a cattle ranch out in the cold, so I'm not afraid of the cold or snow. And I'm not a good skier, but I'm determined, so I can get there, even though it's not necessarily a pretty way. And I'm all self-taught, and what I taught myself was to carry like a 70 to 80 pound pack. I'm going to be out sometimes for a week. My record is 15 days, and you got to carry all this stuff, including camera gear. I'm not going unless I can take cameras. So I left from the south entrance, went east along the south boundary of the park, to a place called the Thoroughfare, which is the southeast corner of Yellowstone. The most occupied building in the United States outside of Alaska is in the Thoroughfare in Yellowstone Park, of all places. So I went through there and then north and ended up in Mammoth Hot Springs. Took me 14 days. It's about 175 miles. Broke trail, of course, the whole way on my own. And my nighttime temperatures on this little thermometer I carried on my zipper tab was between 35 and 25 below zero. So it was a little chilly. But one of the things that I'm grateful for that I ended up doing it myself was about 4 days in, a place called Harebell, a little stream coming off of Big Game Ridge near the south boundary of the park. Stopped in the middle of the day for a snack and can't sit down because there's 8 feet to 10 feet of snow and everything. So I'm standing there with my pack beside me, eating some chocolate and nuts, and I hear this thumping sound. And I look around like I thought I was out there by myself. And I listened again, and it was my heart. It was so quiet that my head kind of cleared out after a few days. And from then on, in my sleeping bag or whatever, I just hold my breath and I could hear my heart beating. And and that kind of turned it into almost a spiritual experience, because the connection that I felt was just my heart and this silence of this wild country. It's as wild as you can get. Like, this thoroughfare is really remote. So I skied through there. This would have been late February, early March, 1985. And I talked to a friend of mine who's a ranger at Tower. And Randy looked up in the records and said, I was the only person to ski in there for 10 years. So there's nobody else there except what really wild country that intact as well as we can have right now. And so I was privileged, I think, to be really truly immersed in that. My little body in this huge, huge wilderness. And I find that really, it's humbling and as well as welcoming in a lot of ways. It's not a threat to me. Again, I grew up on this cattle ranch in the cold, and I dress well enough for that, and I'm able to move in this country. So again, I'm comfortable that way. So it's mostly a mental preparation. There's a lot of people who physically could do that, but mentally they can't. And I think a lot of people are afraid of wildness, and it's not a threat at all. We evolved. Our ancestors were the ones that survived and prospered in wilderness. Going back, my Norwegian ancestors, not very far back, were subsistence fishermen and subsistence farmers. And they got a lot of their food and whatever from wilderness. And so I'm trying to kind of go back and reconnect with that. And so what I'm trying to do with my photography is show people how beautiful it is. I mean, it's isolated. I mean, it's separate. It's on their computer screen or on a book or whatever. But if they can get a sense that this is not scary, it's beautiful, and it's therefore valuable. And then also, ultimately, I'm trying to say, well, if it's valuable, then it's worth saving. It's worth paying attention to and working to protect it, because it's not irrelevant to us. It's important. Critical.
Yeah, I love this. I agree so much. I think that it's so important to cherish and share some of the beauty of the world, especially that's which is so deeply wild.
Yep. Yep. Right. I mean, we chose, we're hunter-gatherers. We found stuff in wilderness, what was edible, what we could build shelters with, how we could make clothes for ourselves out of vegetation or leather or whatever. And we domesticated a few things like, cows and chickens and horses and wheat and rice, that sort of stuff. Potatoes, but we found these things from wilderness. They came from wilderness. We didn't create those things. And we need to keep that humility that we're not above this. And we didn't create it. We exploited it. And our potential downfall is to over-exploit it, take it all, clear cut it, log it, mine it, dig it up out of the ground and burn it. And it's not, the end game to that is destruction, ultimately. But if we can keep significant sections of this earth, that's our hope. I mean, selfishly, we say, well, that's where the medicines could come from and that sort of thing, the new cure for cancer, all that stuff. And that's fine. But my attitude is, it's not all about us. What happens is we need to let evolution and the power of wilderness exist for its own sake. And and go on without us. And rather than gobble it all up and use it and then wonder what happened, we need to stem back.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You've got me really thinking about biodiversity.
Yep.
And for how vast Yellowstone is, I can imagine that there's a ton of it. And I've also heard that in some of the most like unformidable conditions, there's still life that thrives. Like I think bacteria.
Yes, yeah, it's really wonderful stuff. You're exposed. I mean, bacteria is everywhere. About 90% of us is bacteria. That's how we digest food and how our cells work. It's all bacteria. Bacteria can live without us, but we can't live without bacteria. There's some that's harmful, but most of it isn't. Most of it's beneficial. In Yellowstone, it's much more evident. Look right above my head. That's an aerial photograph of a feature in Yellowstone Park called Grand Prismatic Spring. And that color, that orange and yellow and greens, is bacteria. Cyanobacteria, it's called. Cyan is blue. None of it's blue. The blue in this photograph is actually clean water that's too hot for bacteria to grow. It's called cyanobacteria because the heat energy source for these little creatures is the blue spectrum of light. So that's called cyanobacteria. And there's literally thousands and thousands of species of bacteria that we know of in just these hot springs. And it's a friend of mine, Bruce Falk, University of Illinois professor. He's a microbiologist and a geologist, which is a kind of a cool combination. He combines these two disciplines, and he spent 25 years studying mammoth hot springs in Yellowstone Park. My favorite hot spring, my favorite thermal feature, because it's so dynamic. And he was studying the interaction between bacteria and rock. So bacteria creates the structure of the rock at Mammoth Hot Springs. And it's really amazing stuff. He was one of the people who decided where to land the Mars rover because they're looking for life on Mars. And they figure if there's any life there, it probably was bacteria because everything on Earth started from bacteria. We evolved from bacteria. And we don't know exactly where, probably deep water vents under the ocean, but we're not sure about that. So they figure if driving this little rover around and they see any rock that looks sort of like Mammoth Hot Springs rock, there is or has been bacteria and life on Mars. Anyway, some really, really cool stuff. And he is now working with the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota on kidney stones. And kidney stones apparently are very painful, and they're calcium carbonate, travertine, calcite kind of rock, grows in kidneys and is very painful to try to expel these kidney stones. Well, Bruce found out that they form the same way that rock forms in Yellowstone Park at Mammoth Hot Springs. So the idea is if you can figure out how they form, which bacteria create in certain people, which create these kidney stones, you can prevent them from forming. I mean, so Yellowstone and wilderness, I mean, Mammoth Hot Springs is a wilderness. That structure, that whole square mile plus complex of hot springs is wild country. And it's right there. You can park and walk around on boardwalks, but we've left it alone. Again, which is really important. We need to leave wild places alone. There's not much left, and because they become even more important. And then study them. I mean, you can learn a lot by studying a cornfield, but you can learn a lot more by studying a wild place because there's so much more going on that we really have no idea. So what Bruce was doing was pure science. In other words, kind of scratch your head and say, what's going on here? And he spent 25 years. And some people would say, well, that's a waste of time. What's the immediate benefit? And there is no end game with what he was doing, which I love. Pure science is actually the most intriguing to me because of just, what's going on here? I don't know why, if it's important or if it's irrelevant to anything, but ultimately it's all important because it's all what's going on in life around the globe, around the world, 2 miles down in the ocean, up in the stratosphere. We're all related. So the more we know about it, the better. And again, wild country is the laboratory with some of a selfish perspective, but that's where we can learn.
Yes, and there is so much to learn.
Yeah.
I've got a deep appreciation for the wild, and I grew up really enjoying Nat Geo, History Channel, Discovery, loved documentaries as a kid. All of that, just loved it so much.
And the Webb telescope. I love the Webb telescope.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I was curious if you must have traveled to Africa in your career. My father's from South Africa, and
Well,
I've seen a bit of Kruger Park and Pilanesberg. I'm curious, your photography and your work has taken you all around the world.
mhm.
So I'd love to hear some of your adventures that you've had, some of your expeditions.
Yeah.
I'd really love to know more.
Yeah, good. Well, I could keep you all day because I there's a lot of wonderful experiences that, and some of them I was able to make photographs of. But my favorite animal in the world, I get asked that a lot. They think, well, it's a bison or whatever. There's 10 of them I probably would have to list, but my favorite of all is the mountain gorilla in Central Africa. They are spectacular creatures. There's less than 1,000 of them, they think, in the world. The gorillas you see in zoos are lowland gorillas. These are mountain gorillas in the high mountain range of the Baruga Mountains in Central Africa. Go on my website and just type in search mountain gorilla while you bump into some of my favorite photographs there. And one of them of mountain gorillas, one of them is a mom holding a 5-week-old baby gorilla. This little baby guy they're kissing each other and stroking each other's faces. I mean, it was amazing experience to see that, and they're comfortable with me there with a camera. I wasn't real close to them, but I was within 10 yards of them. And to be able to show that to people, their affection, their connection with each other, I hope removes some fear of the wild creatures and show them that, show the public or the world that these are beautiful. Therefore, let's work to save them, not for us, save them because they're worth it just for themselves. And they're just beautiful. They're huge. They're big animals. The big silverback males weigh about 500 pounds. They're bigger than most grizzly bears in Yellowstone Park. But yet they eat vegetation and they're very strong family connections, emotional things. So one of the problems with the survival of the gorillas, mountain gorillas, is habitat destruction. That's the biggest one, but is poaching. And they poach them with snares. Now, they're not necessarily after a mountain gorilla. They're after a number of other animals, including buffalo and deer, or not deer, but antelopes, whatever. So they have these snares that they set up. Once in a while, these gorillas get caught in them. And for little guys, they get caught in a snare. They're not strong enough to break that snare. And they are stuck there. Well, of course, the parent will stay around and feed them if they can, but they got to wait until their hand or their fingers dies and rots off and before they can get away. So there's a number of gorillas that I've seen missing fingers, missing a hand, and because they had it caught in a snare as a baby. Gorillas are terrified of these snares. If they're big, they can oftentimes break them, but they're worried about their little ones. The government of Rwanda, the Kanos National Park, which I've visited, I think, 12 or 14 times now, they have guards with guns watching this family of gorillas during the day, so they are safe. So what's amazing to me is the gorillas are afraid of people putting these snares out, but they learn very quickly that these people that spend the day with them are trying to help them. So, but if a gorilla family sees a snare, they pull their babies away. They run off away from this thing, and they won't let the people go to that snare, take it apart. People have to wait until the gorillas go a half a mile away and then sneak back and take the snare down. So they're protecting not only their own family, but they're protecting other creatures and other species too. So that kind of empathy is one reason I love these animals, besides they're beautiful. And anyway, so it's a wonderful, beautiful place, this wild places. And again, it's not dangerous, any more dangerous than walking across the interstate highway. And it's what motivates me to be out as much as I can, because there's always wonderful stuff happening, and most of it I can't get. I don't have the right equipment. I don't, the right light, whatever. But if I can make a photograph that can transmit some of this emotion that I had when I saw this event, saw these creatures, saw this beautiful landscape, and people say, "Wow, that is really beautiful," then I'm successful. I don't want attention given to me. What kind of camera did I use, and how did I get there, all that stuff. Well, I got there, and I happen to have the right kind of equipment. I want people to pay attention to what's in that picture and why it's attractive to them.
This is such a great and humble outlook on it. I think that it just really cherishes the beauty of nature. And I just really love hearing you speak about wildlife. I know this is something that you're so passionate about. I know conservation and preserving things must be a very high value for you.
That's all
There's
it's about.
probably there's so much to the world and so many different places. I know that by now there's probably most places in the world you would have loved to shoot. You would have tried to get out there by now, but is there still other places that you've longed to go for a while?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got a pretty long list, and it's all wild country. I mean, I'm going to be in New York at the Explorers Club in June, and I guess CBS morning show is going to do a feature on me there while I'm in New York. So I'm looking forward to that. And I know I like New York. They have good food and good art galleries, that sort of thing. But where I want to spend my time is places that are wild. And so there, again, Antarctica 10 times. There's some places I'd like. Antarctica is a big continent. I think it's the third largest continent in the world, but most of it's covered with ice, which is beautiful. But I'm kind of done with Antarctica, but I would like to spend some more time in the Arctic, the other end of the globe. And it has ice, but not like Antarctica ice, but it has more wildlife, more variety. So north of the Brooks Range in Alaska, along the Beaufort Sea, the Chukchi and other places up in there, lots of wildlife up in there. Birds, actually, there's snow geese and sandhill cranes and other birds flying over right now over Montana, heading for those nesting grounds. So that's one of my motivations and places I'd like to be. I love the Aleutian Islands. That's wild country as well. This whole string of islands that goes on for like 2,000 miles, almost inaccessible. I'm attracted to those places, not because I want to encourage other people to go. I don't need to go there and change it. I want to see what wild country is and wild creatures are doing and try to tell the story. Greenland, Baffin Island, this northern stuff, kind of harsh stuff, becomes almost inaccessible, which that's one reason I haven't been there very much because it's very expensive and time consuming to get to these places. I'm a wildlife photographer, not an orthodontist, so I can't afford to do a lot of this travel. But when I get a chance, I go. There's some places in Australia. That's the other only continent I haven't visited is Australia, and it's on my list. And I'm interested in the wild country of Australia as well. Someday I'll get there. It's not a checklist as such. If I can figure out how I can get to one of these places and be left alone to just absorb it. And it's like in order to tell a story of a of a place, of an animal, of a creature, who this animal is, not what it is. I mean, you got to identify it, of course, but who they are. How do they make a living? How do they interact with each other? How do they interact with the landscape? This broader story. That's what I want to talk about in my photographs. So in order to do that, I mean, there's an old adage, a blind chicken will find a piece of corn once in a while, so you can stumble into stuff. But to consistently make good photographs, you need to know what's going on. Growing up on a cattle ranch, I learned more than I want to know about cows and horses and chickens. It was invaluable because bison and wildebeest and other animals, sort of elk, sort of do some of the same things as other ungulates. They each have their unique, beautiful behaviors that are unique to them, but I need time. My analogy is if you want to consistently get good photographs of a baseball game, you need to know the rules of baseball. Otherwise, you have no idea. What are they doing out there? Why are they running around? So it's being informed as I can. So it takes time. You can dump me out and, I'm a little more than a blind chicken now. I can do okay with not knowing too much about what's going on. But if I really want to tell the story, I need to know what's going on. And as much as I can, there's serendipity has been a big contributor to my success, but you make your own luck. You say, well, you're lucky. You're lucky to be in the right place at the right time. Well, yeah, sometimes, but most of the time it's not luck. I see a possibility and, oftentimes it doesn't happen, doesn't pay, but you select your opportunities and ready for something to happen. And, there's thousands and thousands of photographs I've missed, but I didn't waste my time. I'm still learning. So if I sit on a hillside looking at a herd of bison, whatever, I'm working actually. I'm watching them. Why are they, why did that one step aside? How come it went this way? And what happened? What do they do when a coyote shows up? Most of the time they don't really pay attention. What's the coyote doing? How does it interact with the bison? So it's all relevant. Again, coming back to what I said before, we're all interrelated. And what I can tell through what I can tell others through my photographs, hopefully will add to this uh, reservoir of understanding in a little way. I mean, a little tiny bit, but um, I can't change the world, but I can be a positive force if possible.
No, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think that I would love to get out there and see more of the wild. I can't imagine what it must be like to really be that deeply in nature. It's been so long for me. I miss it a lot.
Yeah.
I think there's
Well,
something just so natural to being out there.
yeah, yeah. Well, we're basically still a wild creature. We rely on food that came out of the dirt, breathing air that's going around the world. And so I relate to your desire to to be in touch with what, and I can't solve the world's problems with this, but if people can take comfort and encouragement too, some hope for the survival of us and also the rest of the world. I don't want to make people feel bad they can't be there, but I would like to make them feel positive that it does exist someplace, and hopefully will continue to exist.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. That's the duties of the people today and the generations to really carry on and preserve our lands and to try and take care of this place because we're custodians of it. And I think to assume that just as we continue to expand and this over industrialization of the world, I feel like we have to save something for the future.
Yep. Yep.
I know that even looking historically, certain species have not fared well. Like
Right.
the
Yeah.
rhinos are having a hard time. Some stuff is just really endangered.
Yep.
And I think by getting out there and doing your work, I feel like you are doing a great service to the world and to the people.
In a little way, I try to make a positive difference. I don't believe that you're a good citizen unless you give back to your community and give back to your profession. What I'm trying to do, I mean, I like to eat, so I try to make a living at this, but my bigger goal, long-term goal is to show people how valuable this is in visual way. And, I've tried to tell these stories too. A photograph wouldn't necessarily tell the whole story, but it should be everybody's goal to help our neighbors. And our neighbors are wild creatures as well. I mean, I think, a lot of people have a pet dog and a pet cat or a bird or fish, whatever. I don't have pets, but I don't need them in a sense because I can, I feed magpies in my yard. I love magpies. One of my 10 favorite animals, actually. People are trying to keep a connection to wildness. There's a dog, but it's a pet dog, yet it still has a lot of the behaviors of a wolf where it came from. Cats are probably a little closer to wildness than dogs are. If I had when Bonnie and I moved here to Livingston, we brought our cat at the time. It was a beautiful little calico cat named Fuzzbutt. Wonderful cat. And I wouldn't do this now, but she lived outside and she killed a lot of birds. So I wouldn't have a house cat. I'd have a house cat, but I wouldn't have a cat that went outside because they kill birds. But it was really fun to watch her, how she moved around the house. And it's the same kind of behavior that she would have moved around in the prairie, stalking things, stalking, my shoelace or something, And so that's a good thing. But the broader picture is wild places again. I can't say that often enough. And if you can't get there, at least try to understand it and appreciate it and help to preserve it.
That is right. That's right. Wow, Tom, I wish that I could be out there with you in the wild. I mean, I know that you do take people out sometimes, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I've had a tour business to teach photography for 41 years now. um, it's been my livelihood, and it's been really wonderful. A lot of if you look on my website or my books, whatever, probably 75% of those photographs were made on tours. So I was paid to be out there, show people, some of the beautiful things that are available to them. So I said two things. One, I got paid to be there. Second one is I gave people good opportunities. There was stuff there that they could have made good photographs. But at this point, I'm cutting way back on the tour business. I haven't advertised for 23 years because of word of mouth. Fairly well known around here. So I'm trying to cut way back on that. And my goal ultimately is I would like to get my photographs on people's walls so they can sit there and watch and look at them and learn from them day to day, make a positive reminder in their houses or their offices. So that's my goal now, is to try to sell prints basically. And I still want to, I'm going to spend time, as much time as I can outside. I'm not going to go sit on the couch. I don't own a cell phone because I don't want to be tied to the electronics. I almost never watch television. It's more interesting to go outside from my standpoint.
That's right. That's right. I think this is really good. I have found that there's a lot of your work that has a message, or it's got something more profound in the way that there's the composition, or in the certain situations that you find the animals in. I've seen them really endure so much,
Mhm.
to survive. I remember seeing this baby seal going, there was nursing, and there was a bird that was trying to get in there, and like the baby was like, "Hey, stop," and it's like amazing that you can find these personalities and characters in
Yeah,
the wild.
yeah.
And I love it. I mean, so I would say, yeah, people should have your work on their walls. I mean, I've been looking a bit through your website, and really it's lovely.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's a matter of, um, there's something going on all the time, everywhere in nature, and it's not. I mean, one of the things that I started out of high school. I went to college to be a chemist, and I realized I didn't want to live in a chemistry lab. I wanted to be outside, and so what transpired was spent as much time as I could outside, and and of course, growing up on this cattle ranch, you you have to understand cattle behavior. Otherwise, you're going to get hurt. One time I had a physical, and the doctor looked at me and said, "Did you know your nose has been broken?" I said, "No, I didn't know that. I've had a lot of nosebleeds when I was a kid." I don't know which cow kicked me at that time. But anyway, my point is, by understanding what's going on outside and things happen, to try to anticipate that, like the photograph you're thinking about is a baby elephant seal, and she was nursing, and little milk leaking out around her face, on her lips. And this skua saw this milk and was trying to take some of that milk away, and which annoyed this little baby seal. So he started yelling at this seal. Kind of had to understand what was going on there to get myself in the right place with the right equipment and as much as possible. So that I'll never be done because it's going on right now somewhere all over the world. Uh, and if I can uh, spend as much time out there as I can, be ready, and understand potentially what's happening. It's an opportunity to tell these stories and educate people about how smart these animals are. I mean, I grew up knowing animals were smart. Each had individual personalities. Different horses were different. Some cattle were obviously different, more aggressive, more whatever. But I was taught in science that it was all instinctual. And that's nonsense, absolute nonsense. I knew that as a kid. And so what I'm seeing is they learn as they grow, just like me, and accumulation of these experiences will apply to what they do in the future. It's in a lot of ways they're somewhat predictable. They're not little wind up toys, but they're somewhat predictable, and yet they're all individuals. And so some of them will be more aggressive, some will be more deferential, and it's cool to see that behavior. And they're going to respond in different ways. One's going to be more bold about jumping in a river and swimming across the river. The other's going to wait until somebody else goes first. I mean, it's just all cool, interesting stuff. There's an old adage in the bird watching profession, hobby, I guess you'd say, is got all these bird books about what they do and where they go and whatever. But the adage is, if the bird and the book disagree, believe the bird. So they do some interesting stuff that they're surprised you don't know they're doing. So I had a baby magpie in my backyard, feed him dog food. And one year had young one that was pretty bold. She tolerated me right away and started feeding her. And pretty soon she'd come up and sit like 4 inches from my hand. And she loves Swiss cheese. So I'd give her little pieces of Swiss cheese. Very tolerant little bird. She never was a pet. She'd never take the food out of my hands, but I'd lay it on the table 3 inches from my hand and she'd pick it up. And she's sitting there in this little table right beside me. And all of a sudden, boom, she dives under my seat, under my chair, and hides behind my heels, snuggled up against the back of my feet. And I said, something's going on here. So I look around, and pretty soon, way in the distance, here comes a hawk. She saw that way, way away. And the hawk flew over me, over our house, made a big circle, and went back to the east. She's hiding behind my shoes, peeking around my feet until that hawk disappeared and came back out and went back to eating Swiss cheese. Again, that story, I can't photograph it, but that behavior, that wasn't instinctual. She learned, watch out for those hawks and hide behind Tom's feet because he'll protect me. Anyway, thousands of those kinds of stories that encourage me that these creatures of all sizes, from a from a tadpole to a giraffe, all have interesting stories, unique stories to each individual. And if I can tell one story about one creature, that sort of applies, I think, to the value of all of them, having lives that are worth it just for them, not for me, not to make a photograph. These animals aren't out there for my benefit at all. But if I can make good photographs, I can benefit them, I hope.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That is a way that we could help them. I think it's important that people respect the wildlife.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I really enjoyed talking with you, Tom. I don't want to keep you too long. Hopefully you're okay.
No, I'm good. I'd like to have one story I'd like to tell. It has nothing to do with, well, it has to do with photography. It has
Please tell me.
a great gray owl. Beautiful bird, pretty rare around here. We're sort of the southern extreme here in Yellowstone Park of their habitat. They mostly live north of here in Canada and Alaska. We have a few around here, and they're a big bird. They're dimensionally the largest owl on North America. They're not the heaviest, but they're about 2 feet tall, and lots of.
Yeah.
They're a crepuscular bird. So you have a diurnal bird, which is active in the daytime. You have a nocturnal bird, or animals that are active at night. And then you have a lot of animals that are what they call crepuscular, which means they feed and move in the morning and the evening, sleep at night during the day. So this was in October 1988. I know that because that's the year of the fires in Yellowstone. And so there was an area that had burned and burned the grass off. And their prey, the voles and the mice, were very vulnerable and visible because the grass was gone. So these 3 great gray owls spent a couple of weeks in this area around a place called Indian Creek. So every morning I'd get up in the dark and I'd drive down there and spend the day with these 3 great gray owls. And they got really tolerant of me. They were after mice and I was benign. And once in a while, they'd come down and grab a mouse, and this wing would hit the leg of my tripod. I mean, they were really tolerant. So again, they're crepuscular. So I get down there first thing in the morning, as soon as I had some light, photograph them hunting, whatever. And then about 10 o'clock, they'd go up into a tree and sit there and sleep during the day. So this guy went up in this Doug fir tree about 20 feet off the ground on a branch right next to the log and the trunk, which is big. It probably was 2-foot diameter trunk. So I knew he was just going to stay there the rest of the day or for hours. So I went over, set my tripod and lens down, and leaned up against a log watching this bird and went to sleep. Took a nap myself. And maybe about noon, 1 o'clock, all of a sudden, I woke up. I woke up and looked around. Another thump. There was a squirrel up in the tree above me, clipping cones off and dropping them, and then thump. They come down and thump. He did that for about 20 minutes. Spit them out, and they'd come thumping down. Came down the tree, and of course, the owl is watching this squirrel. So I'd get ready to get an owl killing the squirrel. But so the squirrel runs around, picks up these cones, and stashes them. And he didn't know the owl was there. He knew I was there, because that was pretty obvious. And so the owl is watching this guy going back and forth, and the squirrel picks up all these cones that he's gotten and goes to the next tree, which happens to have an owl in it. So he zips up this tree and he gets like 18 inches from this owl, and he goes, it scares him. The owl almost fell out of the tree because the owl was startled by this squirrel yelling obscenities at him as he raced past up the tree. So the squirrel's up the tree about 10 feet above the owl. The owl's sitting there looking up at this squirrel. He's yelling obscenities because he just gave him a baby heart attack. And it took him, the squirrel, I don't know, 20 minutes before he could build up his nerve to run back past the owl. He could have killed the squirrel. I just thought he might. Anyway, those kind of stories and experiences, teach me about potentially what could happen next. And I regret that I wasn't able to get photographs of that, partly because I didn't expect it. Sort of like the owl, I didn't expect it either. Anyway, nature is, if you sit and watch, you will learn something, and you will be get a lot of satisfaction out of it. You just go to your city park and watch ducks. I mean, there's always something cool going on.
You reminded me of a story my mom told me about my grandmother. She, at one point, rescued an owl that must have had a bad wing. And whenever she would visit the woods, she'd call out, "Hey, Jasper!" And this owl would come and come to her. And it was really, really a beautiful thing. I think that she must have been a guide or something. She would have people with her that would be surprised by this.
Really
But
cool.
this wild owl that would come visit her. But yeah, they're really wonderful creatures. There's a bird rescue facility in Jersey I know about called the Raptor Trust, and I love visiting there and seeing all the different birds they have there. All of them there are not able to be released back into the wild. And I've seen very small owls there.
Yeah.
I think that it's like saw-whet owl or something like that.
We have pygmy owls that are about 6 inches tall. Beautiful little thing, great, beautiful eyes. Yeah, they're called murder muffins because they kill other birds. They look like a muffin in a tree.
Goodness. Oh, goodness. The kestrel is also a very small
Yeah,
predatory bird.
yeah, that's a small falcon. Yeah.
Oh, I see. And I wonder if some of the birds of prey here that we see in the Northeast, you would also see maybe some of them by
Some
Montana?
depends. Yeah, if you have kestrels there, we have kestrels here. There's a bunch of photographs on my website of a nesting of a nest cavity with little kestrels peeking out of the hole. No, you probably have red-tailed hawks. That's a big one. You're getting bald eagles back there. Probably don't have goldens. They're more of a prairie bird. But yeah, there's some that are, tolerant or prosper in all kinds of different habitat. There's a specific kind of place they have to live to make a living, or occupy to make a living. So I don't know. I'm not a birder as such. I mean, I don't have a life list or anything like that. But so a lot of times I'll photograph a bird and I don't even know what it is for sure. But there's a certain kinds of birds that those grassland birds. Passerines mean that a perching bird. And then there's a corvids group of birds called corvids. That's crows, magpies, ravens, jackdaws, different kinds of jays. They have a certain kind of behavior they have. They have a similar way of making a living. So you have blue jays probably there. You generally are a little far north for blue jays, although global warming, they're starting to show up here because the habitat's getting a little more like what they like. We have other ones like a Steller's jay that looks like a blue jay, very closely related. So anyway, there's groups of birds that act in different ways, different hunting styles and whatever. Raptors are probably the smartest, although as a group, the corvids are considered the smartest group of birds, ravens, crows. So there's one of my favorite, I'm a trivia guy. My head's full of all kinds of useless information, but groups of birds have different names, like crows are a murder of crows. Magpies, another corvid, is called a tidings of magpies. Ravens, which the main big black bird in Yellowstone, is an unkindness. So why that's called an unkindness, but So I have one bad bird joke. Um, one crow is a crow. Three or more crows is a murder. So two crows is attempted murder.
That's not a bad joke at all. I really liked that. Oh man, that's great.
So I made up a few myself. A group of photographers, I call them a clique.
That's good, man. I love corvids,
Mm.
see the African pied crow when I go to South Africa. I mean, it's really cool. It has like a tuxedo kind of look, like it's white and black up
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and ravens, I see them around New York a bit.
Fun.
They're huge,
They're big.
right?
Yeah, they're bigger. They're about the size of a raven here, but they have this beautiful white patches. Yeah, yeah.
Wow, man. I've actually wanted to go to Yellowstone. I think most of my life I had never been.
Good.
For people who are going there for the first time, maybe you have some words for them, recommendations?
If you can, take at least a week, and get up early in the morning, have breakfast later, or take it with you, and go out and away from the popular tourist places, stops. Like Old Faithful's pretty cool. Grand Prismatic Spring, that's a place right here. Are amazing. Spend some time there, but go out into the boondocks, find a pullout, get out of the car, walk about a half a mile or even 300 yards away from the road, and just sit down. And you will not regret it. It could change your life just by watching what goes on. I mean, you're going to see birds around you. That's one of the things I like about birds. They're generally everywhere, and it's some kind of bird moving around someplace, and and then and listen and just absorb it. Turn off electronic devices. That's easy for me because I don't own a cell phone, so I don't have to worry about that. But um, and spend some time near water. That's going to give you a certain kind of wildlife experience. Get out in the grasslands, get into some of the forested areas. Um, hike farther you can. I mean, there's about 1,000 miles of maintained trails in Yellowstone. So you can do, a 2-week backpacking trip without any trouble and just make a loop someplace. And it's, it's a good place to go buy a coffee mug and a t-shirt, but the best experience is going to be connecting with the wildness of the place. And ultimately, that's why I think that's mostly the attraction. I think that's your attraction, is to touch this wildness that we all need, whether we acknowledge it or not. So if you can um, just calm down and learn.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I am so grateful, Tom, that I
Mm.
really enjoyed this time with you. I learned a ton, and I just I'm given some like hope and inspiration. Like hearing somebody speak so with such fondness and care for the earth and the wildlife is just really beautiful. You don't hear it every day. Like here around the cities, like we see litter, we see trash, we see like and it's horrible, And we're so in these cities and in these suburbs that I just know that somehow we're missing something. Like we need to get out there. I think it's really part of the human experience is, if you can, to really get out there in the wild.
Yep, yep, yep. It's necessary ultimately for our own spiritual health and ultimately for the health of the globe. We don't have another one. We're going to try to go to Mars apparently, but there ain't much on Mars that I could see, mostly just rock. So it's not going to be an oasis there. And we have this oasis here. That's one reason I really like the Webb telescope and the Hubble and all these photographs. Again, we're a visual creature. I mean, my nose isn't any good. Mostly my nose is for ornamentation, but we we learn a lot with visual stimulus. And what's cool about this Webb telescope and the Hubble is we're looking beyond our oasis and think there's what I'm seeing, maybe my own attraction is out there, there's going to be other oases. And that the plural of oasis is they're out there somewhere, but they're not accessible to us. And if we don't take care of what we have here, ours is going to blink out. But there is some hope for me, others, maybe millions of others out there. And I hope they're paying attention.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. Yeah, it reminds me of like the pale blue dot
Yep.
by Sagan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to definitely preserve what we have here. We have one Earth.
Yeah. 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 That's all we got, really.
Lovely. All right. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you.